Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamstra. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Krupa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I thought as we begin this Bhagavad Gita, it'd be appropriate for us to read the translation of that invocation prayer that Srila Prabhupada has presented. You know, we recite the prayers often, but how often do we get an opportunity to recite the translation? So, and the translation for all of us who are not conversant in Sanskrit is more important so that we can understand the meaning of what we are reading. So. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Very appropriate that today is the appearance day of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, and this verse comes from his book, and he composed this verse in one of his songs as an offering to Srila Rupa Goswami. So appropriate we are reading it today. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and unto the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, along with his elder brother Sanatana Goswami, as well as Raghunath Das, Raghunath Bhatt, Gopal Bhatt, and Sri Jiva Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances to the Lord Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, along with Advaitacharya, Gadadhar, Srivas, and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna, along with their associates Sri Lalita and Vishaka. O my dear Krishna, you are the friend of the distressed and the source of the creation. You are the master of the gopis and the lover of Radharani. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I offer my respects to Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like molten gold, and who is the queen of Vrindavan. You are the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and you are very dear to Lord Krishna. I offer my respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, just like desired trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. I offer my obeisances to Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas, and all others in the line of devotion. So this is the translation from the invocation. So Prabhupada is presenting the introduction today, and so we'll discuss the introduction. He establishes very early on that the Gita is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. It is the most important of all the Upanishads. There are 108 primary Upanishads. Of those, there are 11 principles, and this Gita Upanishad is the essence of all. And At the end of this introduction, on page 28 of the introduction, Prabhupada is quoting some verses from Gita Mahatmya, and he says, again at the bottom of page 28, one need only attentively and regularly hear and read Bhagavad Gita. In the present age, people are so absorbed in mundane activities, and that it is not possible for them to read all the Vedic literatures. But this is not necessary. This one book, Bhagavad Gita, will suffice, because it is the essence of all Vedic literatures, and especially because it is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada is establishing the importance of it, and he quotes this verse, verse 7, where we see Ekam Shastram Deviki Putra Gitim, that let there be one scripture only, one common scripture for the whole world. And this comes from the Gita Mahatmya, verse 7. So this Bhagavad Gita, it is really, we can say, one of the most valuable gifts to the world, to all of humanity. We know the wisdom Krishna spoke to Arjuna gave him eternal peace and happiness. But receiving this Bhagavad Gita in terms that we can understand it, while at the same time keeping the exact message intact, is truly the gift Srila Prabhupada gave to us. His purports make it digestible for us, but he's presenting it as it is, without any adulteration. And the proof of this is the extraordinary worldwide adoption and absorption of this Bhagavad Gita. We see people from all over the world experiencing the benefits of these teachings. And the efficacy of anything is in its result. If I take some medicine and I'm cured, the efficacy of that pill is proven by the result of my cured illness. And the worldwide revolution that is taking place by teaching this Bhagavad Gita, it's the proof of the efficacy of what Srila Prabhupada has presented, that he is presenting it as it is, without any changes, because it is carrying forward the potency of Krishna and Guru Parampara. And so we're extraordinarily grateful to have to come in touch with such a powerful literature by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And the purports and the explanations and the translations that Srila Prabhupada is presenting, he relied heavily on two commentaries from two great Gaudiya Vaishnava acharyas, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Sri Baladev Vidyabhushan. So you'll see references in the purports to many of their commentaries, and if you've seen Srila Prabhupada translating any of the books, you'll see him reading from big voluminous scriptures. When he was translating and preparing the manuscripts for Bhagavad Gita, he was relying heavily on these two great Vaishnava acharyas. So we're again grateful to Srila Prabhupada for presenting this gift as it is. And we know it is as it is based on the extraordinary results that are happening day in and day out by the application of these teachings. So the introduction is broken up into 6 parts, and we'll discuss a little bit on each of the 6. Of course, there's a 30-page introduction that we cannot cover in just this short discussion today in depth, but we'll give a summary of it. It's something we should read frequently, but I fear many of us don't read because we kind of skip to chapter 1 and then continue on. But this introduction is really a gem of Srila Prabhupada's writing. It is 30 pages of extraordinary wisdom and succinct explanations of so many topics. So hopefully you enjoyed reading it for this session, and we'll enjoy reading it in the future. So the 6 points of the introduction, the first, Srila Prabhupada talks about the spirit of approaching the Bhagavad Gita, and this is covered in pages 2 through 5. In page 6, he then introduces the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita and why it was spoken. And then he speaks about the 5 subject matters, the basic truths of this Bhagavad Gita, and that carries from page 7 to page 13. And then he talks about the process of understanding the Bhagavad Gita, and this is presented to us in pages 13 to 15 of the introduction. And then the results of understanding this Bhagavad Gita. So what do we get out of it? And this is presented in pages 15 to 22. And then the introduction concludes with the practical application, pages 22 to 30. And so you can see there's a really nice conceptual flow in this introduction. And if you study Srila Prabhupada's purport, there's also a very systematic flow in his purports. And we'll see some of that as we read Surrender Unto Me. But this introduction has a very logical flow of how he's presenting this. So we'll discuss a little bit about these 6 topics again, and we're just going to glance on the surface of what's presented here. And certainly there's much that can be said about each of these sections, but we'll cover just in summary form today. So in the first section, pages 2 through 5, Srila Prabhupada is guiding us on the spirit of approaching the Bhagavad Gita. And he gives this wonderful explanation right in the beginning about taking the medicine, as it is, talking about if you approach a doctor, you take the medicine as it's given on the directions or as given by the doctor. And so he's guiding us that we should take this Bhagavad Gita as it's given by the speaker. And he establishes the speaker as, of course, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. And so it's important for us to understand that. And, the objective of this whole book is to get us to surrender to Krishna. That is going to be one of the conclusive verses, is to surrender to Krishna and always remember him. And so Srila Prabhupada is guiding our spirit in how to approach this Bhagavad Gita. So he says again, we can't take the medicine according to our own whim or the direction of a friend. It must be taken to the directions of the label or the directions given by a physician. Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita should be taken as it is, directed by the speaker himself. That's a quote from the top of page 3. And clearly the speaker, we know, is Krishna himself, and he must be accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which we'll get to. Then Srila Prabhupada begins to present, what is Arjuna's qualification to hear the Bhagavad Gita. And that qualification is his mood of devotion, that he is a devotee. And Srila Prabhupada says and guides us that we should try to imbue the same mood. That as soon as one becomes a devotee, then that direct relationship with the Lord may be had, the same direct relationship Arjuna had with Krishna. So we are trying to develop this very similar mood so that we may also be qualified not only to hear but to understand the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada emphasizes in this section as well that this knowledge comes from Guru Parampara, that we must hear and read this under the guidance of Guru. This knowledge is descending, and he'll talk more about that in the coming section, but he emphasizes that also in this first part. And then at the bottom of page 5, he makes this conclusive statement that I'll read again, and it's the last paragraph that begins on the bottom of page 5, where Srila Prabhupada says, "Therefore, Bhagavad Gita should be taken up in a spirit of devotion." This is a very, very important and powerful statement, and it unlocks the whole key to us understanding this Bhagavad Gita. If we try to explore this Bhagavad Gita from an academic standpoint or from a rote scholarship standpoint, it will not reveal itself. This Bhagavad Gita is revealed to one who approaches it in this spirit of devotion, devotion to Krishna. And so the important piece for us is to continually remember that. And because devotion is the key to our realizing this Bhagavad Gita, the key success factor in studying this Bhagavad Gita is the quality of our sadhana. And we know the core of our sadhana is our chanting. The better we approach our chanting, the more sincere we approach our chanting of the holy names, the deeper the realizations of the Bhagavad Gita will come and manifest in our heart. And so this is very important for us that as we study this Bhagavad Gita, we really emphasize the importance of our sadhana. Because the better our sadhana, the better our chanting, the more deeper these realizations will penetrate the heart, and more will extract. And as Srila Prabhupada, references later in the purport, trying to approach this Bhagavad Gita, with mundane scholarship is like trying to taste honey by licking the outside of a bottle. It doesn't work. You can lick and lick and lick and lick and lick for years on end. You'll never taste the honey. You're so close to it, separated by just a millimeter of glass, yet nothing will come. So you may hold this Bhagavad Gita, it may be in your heart, you may be reading it every day, but without this spirit of devotion, will not taste the nectar of this Bhagavad Gita. So we'll keep this concept and this statement foremost in our mind, in our hearts, as we explore this Bhagavad Gita, and then it will be revealed to us. So very important opening section of this introduction that Srila Prabhupada is guiding us. So then from there he establishes why was this Bhagavad Gita spoken? What is the purpose? And again, in the top of the 6th page, there's a wonderful statement he makes, which says, the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to deliver mankind from nescience of material existence. Every man is in difficulty in so many ways. So Arjuna also was in difficulty in having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra. So the purpose of this Bhagavad Gita is singlefold: to bring relief from all the material miseries of life, this anxiety and fear and concern and envy and all these things, these suffering. It is to bring end to that, to bring an end to the suffering of mankind. And Arjuna was playing the role of being confused and anxious and fearful in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, which we'll discuss, for the purpose to allow Krishna to speak, to undo that for him, when in reality Krishna is speaking to all of us. So this is the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita, to deliver us from this ocean of material existence. And we should keep that foremost in our mind. And when we hear Krishna's instructions that to do this, to renounce the fruits, to take to this process and to avoid these, the only goal is to free us from our suffering. So, and Prabhupada explains in this page that the first step is to acknowledge that we are suffering. And that in and of itself is very rare. And then even more rare is to then take the step to inquire how to get out of this mess. And so, we are very fortunate that we have come to the point of trying to inquire, because it is rare to inquire, first rare to acknowledge, and second to even then ask questions. So, Srila Prabhupada is presenting this very, very nicely to us. And at the end of the page 6, on the last full paragraph, Prabhupada makes the comment that Krishna descends to reestablish this real purpose of life. And he says, which we are prone to forget. We are so very, very forgetful. But Krishna comes to reestablish what is the real purpose of life. And so while society is saying so many things about the goal of life, Krishna himself is coming and establishing this in reality and presenting it in this Bhagavad Gita for us. Okay. So now the third topic presented in this introduction is the 5 topics that are discussed here and presented throughout the Bhagavad Gita. And this is presented on pages 7 through 13 again. And the 5 topics that are presented are first Ishvara, Krishna, establishing him as the supreme controller, the supreme personality of Godhead. And he is the greatest of all the 5 truths that will be explained. The next topic is Jiva. Who are we? Knowing who am I, we know, is the foundational instruction, and as Krishna begins to speak in the second chapter, he's immediately going to come to this topic. 20 verses he'll present on the topic of the soul, the spirit soul. And so knowing I'm not this body, I'm spirit soul, I'm part and parcel of Krishna, similar in quality, but very minute in quantity, excuse me. And so, we know that the jiva is part of the superior energy of Krishna, the para shakti, that Krishna will explain in chapter 7. But there is a significant distinction between us and Ishvara Krishna. Though we are made up of the spiritual energy, part and parcel of Krishna, we are far inferior to the Supreme Lord, and He is our controller, our predominator. We are the predominated, and this will be discussed in detail in chapter 13. The next topic that's discussed is the material nature, constituted by the three modes of nature, and importantly, this is working under the control of Krishna. Krishna says, this is my prakriti, my energy. So both the jiva and the material nature are under the control of Krishna. That is why he is Ishvara, the supreme controller. He is controlling the material nature and the jiva, the living entity. And we'll discuss that extent of control and where our free will certainly resides in making our decisions about what to do. But we are certainly under his control. So this is the third aspect or third key topic that's presented throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Then karma, the activity and the laws of karma, action and reaction. So the time factor, which is the fifth topic, and the modes combine to facilitate action. And the activity is, of the five truths, it is the only one that is not eternal. And Srila Prabhupada speaks very nicely about how one can change the results of our karma. We can change the activities we do. Right? Krishna is going to tell us at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, if you surrender unto him, he says, Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. I will deliver you from all your sins. Don't fear. Masuchaha. So whatever we've done in the past even can be changed for our destined suffering by the practice of devotional service. So this karma of the five truths is the one that is not eternal. And this Bhagavad Gita is a principal instruction of actually what activity to do. It is specifically telling us which activities are good for us and which activities are bad for us. And this is the great opportunity we have, is to really understand that factor. And then finally is time. And that is the fifth truth. And Krishna will speak about the time factor in several different places. And we understand the nature of time in the material world and its absence in the spiritual world. So these five truths, when we understand them, then we see everything very clearly. And when you understand who is the Supreme Lord, what is my role as jiva, where am I in this material nature, what are my activities that I'm doing, and this time factor that is creating this sense of temporary existence, when we understand these five things, everything becomes very clear. So Krishna is going to speak on these five topics to bring clarity for Arjuna, but ultimately for all of us. And when we have this, it is very clear. But if we don't, it doesn't matter how many PhDs we have, how many amazing universities we've studied from, none of that knowledge will lead to anything but confusion, fear, and anxiety. But understanding these five truths will give us perfect clarity of vision. And so that is why Krishna is speaking on these five topics, and Prabhupada has presented details on each of these five quite elaborately in the introduction. Okay? The fourth topic that's being presented in the Bhagavad Gita is this process of understanding, and this is on pages 13 to 15. Srila Prabhupada establishes that this Vedic knowledge is infallible because it is coming from the perfect source. It is Apurusha. It's coming from Krishna, right? And this Vedic knowledge, it is perfect and complete. It has the essence of everything. There's actually nothing else to know. Everything that we need to know is contained within our Vedic Shastras. And it is not a matter of research. Our own fallible mankind is attempting to do so much research on so many things. But because we have the four defects that Srila Prabhupada lays out in this purport of the introduction, none of that knowledge is reliable. But taking this Vedic knowledge, coming from the perfect source, taking it as it is, without any additions or any subtractions, both are important. We cannot add anything, nor can we subtract anything. Then it is considered as it is. If you take out pieces of Krishna's instructions, it's not as it is. Or if you add your own mundane interpretation to it, it is not as it is. And so it is important that we understand it in this way. And how do we get this knowledge as it is? Krishna spoke this 5,000 years ago and previously millions of years ago. So how do we get this knowledge then? What is our hope? Our only hope to acquire this knowledge is through Guru Parampara. It is by hearing it through disciplic succession, in which the bona fide disciplic succession has not added or subtracted anything to the message Krishna has given. Because this knowledge, it is only descending. It is not ascending, meaning we cannot from our position try to understand up. This knowledge can only come down from Krishna. And so our access to this knowledge is through Guru Parampara. And we'll see, lots of emphasis on that throughout Bhagavad Gita, particularly in chapter 4, as Krishna himself establishes this process of parampara with the very famous verse, Evam parampara praptim imam rajarsyo viduhu sakala neha mahata yoga nashta parantapa. One of the verses we'll learn in this course. So again, this knowledge is descending, not ascending, and we acquire it from the perfect source through Guru Parampara, as shown here, ending with Srila Prabhupada. Okay. Now, what's the results? What do we get by studying this Bhagavad Gita? We're going to approach it in the spirit of devotion. It's presented to us in order to bring relief from all of the suffering. It contains these 5 basic truths that provides clarity of vision. We're going to approach it through Guru Parampara, appreciating and respecting this descending nature of this knowledge. What do I get from it? What does one achieve? And the perfect results are achieved of peace and happiness. It is the goal of every living entity. And so Prabhupada, in pages 15 through 22 of this introduction, lays out, very systematically the information that one gets and how it leads to this perfect peace and happiness. So, in the beginning, it talks about, acting in this knowledge that I am spirit soul. It leads one to begin to accept instructions from the spiritual master. And the devotee accepting instructions from the spiritual master, one's life then becomes fully purified by applying the instructions from this Bhagavad Gita. The application of this Bhagavad Gita will purify one's existence. And when one purifies one's existence, then one attains the spiritual world. And of course, when one attains the spiritual world, there is unlimited bliss and happiness in loving service to Krishna. So this is the result. Ultimately, it was spoken for the purpose to relieve us from suffering, and the result is achieving the eternal abode, the supreme abode. And Krishna is going to dedicate an entire chapter, chapter 8, dedicated to this instruction of how to attain the supreme. Right? So, the key aspect of attaining the supreme is understanding our eternal relationship with Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita awakens our eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord, helping us to realize what is our position, and if we know our position, our relationship, our sambandha, then we can begin to act in it. That is the process of abhideya, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained. By acting in that relationship, then the result, the prayojana of Krishna prema will manifest. So the foundation is understanding our Sanatana dharma. And so Srila Prabhupada speaks, significantly about Sanatana Dharma, which he translates as eternal occupation. And he's very careful to say this is not religion, because religion can change. Religion it sort of implies a set of beliefs or faith. Well, our beliefs and faith can change, but our occupation, our actual duty, that never changes. That is eternal. It is a fact, whether we acknowledge it or not. And what is our Sanatana Dharma? Srila Prabhupada explains to us, it is we are servants of Krishna. And when we realize we are servants of Krishna, then happiness is abound. We are part and parcel. Part must serve the whole. And Srila Prabhupada explains this very nicely. And then he goes deeper in this section to explain that it is the intrinsic nature of the soul to be servant. And he says A is serving B, B is serving C, C is serving D. You may have seen this. And if we analyze, everybody is serving. Why? Because that is the intrinsic nature of the soul. So the only question we have is not if to serve. It is whom to serve. We are going to serve because that is the nature of the soul. But our eternal occupation, our Sanatana Dharma, is to serve the Supreme Lord. And this is the only way to acquire happiness. Serving anything else will not lead to happiness. And this will become very evident as we move through this Bhagavad Gita. And this is, sorry, I missed a couple of the text. This is an eternal fact. It is not a temporary fact. The Supreme Lord is our eternal Father. We are eternally His part and parcels. I may today be the son of Narendra Krishna Das and Saroj Nitya Devi Dasi. But who was I the son of 100 years ago? And who will I be the son of 100 years from now? That is only Krishna. He is our Supreme Father. Aham bijaha pradapita. So the eternal fact is this. And it is also universal. This is not sectarian. Srila Prabhupada establishes this really nicely. That our body color and our body type is only a function of our past karma. And that can change. So my current body can change to a different color. But the soul is the only eternal fact within my existence. So the Chinese have a soul, the Russians have a soul, Americans have a soul, Indians have a soul. And that soul has this same intrinsic quality. So, this Sanatana Dharma is not about, some Eastern philosophy coming west. No. It has no geographic definition. It is completely applicable to everybody because of the universal presence of the soul and this intrinsic nature to serve. So the Sanatana Dharma is not applicable based on body type. That is simply a function of our past karma. So Srila Prabhupada is establishing this, very nicely and quite extensively in this introduction. And then he makes the very, nice comment that is a great reminder for us that it is our desire to enjoy separate from Krishna that is the core of the problem. Our false ego leads us to forget that we are eternally servant. We are not the master. We are the predominated. We were created to be enjoyed, he says. And when one remembers this, then one actually does enjoy. And so Krishna again has come to establish this fact for us, as we are hearing from Srila Prabhupada. So finally, the introduction concludes with the practical application. Now what to do? All of this has been presented. Now what to do? How to approach the spiritual world. And the simple fact is to think about Krishna at the time of death. That is it. Right? Krishna is going to explain in the 8th chapter, Anta kale chamameva smanam muktva kalevaram. And Prabhupada quotes this verse, that if one thinks about Krishna at the time of death, he is sure to achieve him. Of this there is no doubt. He gives us assurances after assurances. So thinking of Krishna is the key. So, life is nothing but a preparation for the next life, as Prabhupada says. And we often say this life is just a preparation for death. Maybe that sounds morbid to some who are attached to the body, but actually it is very enlightening and encouraging for those who understand the journey of the soul back home, back to Godhead. So thinking of Krishna at the time of death is critical. So how to do that? We have to start thinking about Krishna today. We don't know when death is coming. Nobody knows. But we know the question that will be asked. What do you want to do? Whatever desire is in the mind at the time of death, that achieves. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam. Prabhupada quotes this verse as well from the 8th chapter. That whatever one thinks of at the time of death, that they achieve. So this, the practical application here is to think of Krishna. So to think of anything requires strong sense of love. And Prabhupada gives this very vivid example. One of Srila Prabhupada's brilliances amongst many is his ability to bring an analogy or a metaphor to bring something come to life for us. And he gives this very exquisite analogy of a married person with a lover. A married person with a lover is constantly meditating on the lover while doing all their duties, including serving their spouse. And it's such a vivid example to help us illustrate how we should approach our duties, our different responsibilities in the world. We have them. We must maintain the body. Arjuna is going to be asked to fight, but one should do so with full absorption in thought of Krishna. And that full absorption of thought of Krishna doesn't take one to the forest to meditate, as Arjuna will ultimately say, is impractical and will not work. But that absorption in thought is like, as Srila Prabhupada explains, the thought of a spouse with a lover. And so this love is very, very important. To think of Krishna, it requires a strong sense of love. And so how to awaken this love? Prabhupada guides us to the process of devotional service by hearing about Krishna, by hearing about his extraordinary qualities, his interactions with his devotees, how he is constantly engaged in wonderful activities, and the experiences of devotees, by hearing how the residents of Vrindavan were absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. This Shravanam begins to lead to some attraction. And when there's attraction, then Shamaranam happens. So remembering occurs when there's this strong sense of love. So this is the process. So the process is simple, but it is not easy. Think of Krishna and everything else is accomplished. So the process is simple, but not so easy, and that is why we'll study these 700 verses from Lord Krishna, and as explained and presented to us by Srila Prabhupada, to come to this ultimate conclusive fact, just to think of Krishna. And that is our ultimate goal. And so Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, he compares his Bhagavad Gita to a treasure chest. He says this Bhagavad Gita is a treasure chest. And he says that the first 6 chapters that deal with karma yoga is like the lower golden part of the chest. And the last 6 chapters dealing with jnana form the top, the gem-studded top of the chest. And within the chest, what is there? It is bhakti, the central chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. That is the treasure within the this chest. And it is the most precious treasure within the 3 worlds, he explains, is this devotional service. It's so strong, it has the power to bring even Krishna under their control. So extraordinary is devotional service. And Krishna in chapter 9 and 12 particularly, in other places as well, but particularly 9 and 12, is going to extraordinarily glorify the powers of devotional service. Even if one makes a mistake, they can recover. Even the most fallen can take to the process. And it is a simple process. Patram pushpam phalam toyam. And in so many ways, he's going to glorify bhakti. So, that is inside the treasure. But how to get it? How to access these jewels? We know every chest is often locked. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has said that to access that treasure, there are two verses. There are sacred 64 syllables that cover the chest that is presented as the Bhagavad Gita. And what are those two verses? Those are the two very famous verses that everybody knows and that we will be reading over and over and over again. But verses 65 and 66 from the 18th chapter. Manmana bhava madbhakto majidi mam namaskuru mam evasyasi satyam te pati jane priyosi me, and sarva dharmam parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja ham tum sarva papebhyo moksha ishmana sujaha. These two verses form the key to accessing this entire Bhagavad Gita. And so we'll all focus on always remembering him and surrendering to Krishna. That is ultimately the goal of what Krishna is trying to inspire Arjuna. And Arjuna concludes by saying, Karishe Vachanam Tava. I am now prepared to follow. And our goal, our hope, is that by studying this Bhagavad Gita, we will also come to that same conclusion that Arjuna did, being prepared to follow. And if we pray to Guru Parampara for their mercy, we can also come to that knowledge, that understanding. And so I just wanted to conclude today's introduction by just reading the disciplic succession. Again, something maybe we don't do so often, but it's a nice way to remind us of exactly how this knowledge is coming to us through disciplic succession. I know there are some songs that are sung. I will not do it in such way, but just reading this parampara is very, very powerful for us. So we'll conclude today's discussion with that. On page 30, the disciplic succession, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarsyo viduhu, Bhagavad Gita 4.2. This Bhagavad Gita, as it is received through this disciplic succession. Krishna, Brahma, Narada, Vyasa, Madhava, Padmanabha, Nirhari, Madhava, Akshabhya, Jayatirtha, Jnana Sindhu, Dayanidhi, Vidyanidhi, Rajendra, Jayadharma, Purushottama, Brahmanya Tirtha, Vyasa Tirtha, Lakshmi Pati, Madhavendra Puri, Ishvara Puri, Nityananda and Advaita, Lord Chaitanya, Rupa, Sarupa Sanatana, Raghunath, Jiva, Krishnadas, Narottama, Vishwanath, Baladev, Jagannath, Bhakti Vinod, Gaura Kishora, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So we're grateful to Guru Parampara for allowing us to have access to this knowledge, and we'll pray to them for their mercy so that we can come to the conclusion that Arjuna came to, which was surrender to Krishna and always thinking of him. So this is the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. Next week we'll discuss the first 11 verses of chapter 1, and look forward to discussing that. So any comments or questions before we adjourn for today? I guess whether your audio is not on. I'm not hearing.
It's sent through WhatsApp. Sent through WhatsApp.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for today? Okay. Well, if not, you can send any messages if needed, and we can discuss. So, thank you very much, everyone, for your attention. Look forward to discussing first 11 verses next week. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone.